The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clattered against the concrete floor of my shop. I was elbow deep in the engine of a 1967 Mustang, trying to coax life back into its carburetor, when I heard my wife's voice drifting through the open window above my workbench. "God, Dane has such incredible stamina," Nessa giggled into her phone. "Jared just rolls over and goes to sleep." I froze. My name is Jared Sollace, and I've been restoring classic cars in this cramped garage for the past 12 years. The shop sits behind our Victorian house in Millbrook, Massachusetts, a town where old money pretends the new money doesn't exist, and guys like me fix both their cars and their attitudes. "I can't wait until after the wedding," Nessa continued, her voice carrying that breathless excitement she used to reserve for me. "Then we can stop sneaking around like teenagers." My hands started shaking. Dane Carter. I knew exactly who she was talking about. Her business partner in the wedding planning company they'd started 2 years ago. The guy who'd been coming around our house for business meetings that seemed to happen whenever I was working late in the shop. "Lila, you should have seen him yesterday at the motel," Nessa whispered conspiratorially. "He does this thing with his—" I didn't need to hear the rest. 23 years of marriage, and my wife was planning to dump me right after our vow renewal ceremony tomorrow night. The ceremony I'd spent $8,000 on because she said it would reinvigorate our relationship. I wiped my hands on my coveralls and walked toward the house. The rehearsal dinner was starting in 2 hours. 50 guests were coming to celebrate our renewed commitment while my wife plotted her escape with her lover. The Victorian house we'd bought 15 years ago creaked as I climbed the back stairs. Nessa was in our bedroom, standing in front of the full-length mirror in a red dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She looked stunning. She always did. "Hey, babe," she said without turning around. "Can you zip me up?" I stood behind her and slowly pulled the zipper. In the mirror, I could see her face. She was glowing with anticipation, but not for our ceremony, for what came after. "You look beautiful," I said. "Thanks." She applied another coat of lipstick. "Are you excited about tomorrow?" "Oh, absolutely," I replied. "I think it's going to be a night nobody forgets." 2 hours later, we were at the Millbrook Country Club. The rehearsal dinner was in full swing. Nessa's friends from her wedding planning business clustered around the bar, gossiping and drinking expensive wine. My sister Emma had driven up from Boston. My buddy Benny Delano, who owned the boxing gym downtown, sat at a corner table looking uncomfortable in his only suit. Dane Carter worked the room like he owned it. Tall, tanned, and wearing a suit that probably cost more than my truck, he played the charming business partner perfectly. He shook hands with my friends, complimented Nessa's relatives, and smiled at me like we were best buddies. "Jared, my man." Dane slapped my back as I stood near the gift table. "Ready for the big day tomorrow?" "More ready than you know," I said. Lila Voss, Nessa's best friend and business partner, appeared beside us. She was a sharp-featured woman with calculating eyes who'd never liked me much. "Jared, you're so lucky to have Nessa. She's been working so hard on this renewal ceremony." "I bet she has," I replied. The evening progressed with speeches and toasts. Nessa's father talked about second chances. My sister mentioned how happy Nessa and I looked together. Everyone raised their glasses and smiled. Then came time for my speech. I stood up, tapping my fork against my wine glass. The room quieted down. 50 faces turned toward me, expectant and cheerful. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I began. "It means the world to Nessa and me to have you here as we prepare to renew our vows." Nessa beamed at me from her seat at the head table. "Marriage is about trust," I continued. "It's about honesty. It's about keeping your promises to the person you love." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. "Unfortunately," I said, my voice growing louder, "some people have a different definition of marriage than I do." Nessa's smile faltered. "Some people think marriage is about having your cake and eating it too. Some people think they can plan a beautiful ceremony while planning their escape at the same time." The room went completely silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming. "Nessa," I said, looking directly at my wife, "would you like to tell everyone about your plans for after our vow renewal? Or should I?" Her face went white. "Jared, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about Dane," I said. "I'm talking about the motel on Route 9. I'm talking about how you can't wait to stop sneaking around after tomorrow night." Gasps echoed through the room. Dane's face flushed red. Lila's mouth fell open. Nessa stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I can't do this anymore," she announced to the room. "I officially cancel the wedding. I don't love you anymore, Jared." The silence that followed was deafening. I smiled. "Thank you for your honesty, Nessa. Really. You just saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Opening it, I removed the diamond ring I'd given her 23 years ago and placed it on the table. "Since we're being honest," I said to the stunned crowd, "let me share a few more truths. Lila, you've been eating free meals at our house twice a week for 2 years, while bad-mouthing me behind my back. Janet, you borrowed $3,000 from Nessa last Christmas and never paid it back. And Carol, you've been using Nessa's business credit card for your personal shopping." I reached into my other pocket and pulled out a stack of papers. "Receipts, everyone. Receipts for everything." I scattered the papers across the table. Credit card statements, bank records, text message printouts. "Oh, and Nessa," I added, "you might want to read that prenup you never signed. Turns out you don't get half of anything. You get exactly what you brought into this marriage, which, if I remember correctly, was a maxed-out credit card and a car with a blown transmission." I picked up my beer and took a long sip. "So here's to dodging a disaster. Thanks for the entertainment, everyone. Drive safely." I walked out of the country club to the sound of chaos erupting behind me. Voices raised in anger, chairs scraping, someone crying. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. In the parking lot, I sat in my truck for a moment, listening to my heart pound. Through the windows of the country club, I could see people arguing, pointing, gathering around tables to examine the papers I'd left behind. My phone buzzed with a text from Benny. Holy hell, man, that was either brilliant or insane. I typed back, why not both? As I drove home through the quiet streets of Millbrook, I realized something had fundamentally changed inside me. For 23 years, I'd been the good guy, the reliable husband, the one who fixed things and kept his mouth shut and played by the rules. But good guys finish last. Good guys get cheated on and humiliated and taken for granted. Maybe it was time to try being the bad guy for a while. The next morning, I woke up alone in my bed for the first time in over 2 decades. Nessa hadn't come home. According to the flurry of angry text messages on my phone, she'd spent the night at Lila's house, planning her next move. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, scrolling through social media. The disaster at the country club had already gone viral in our small town. Someone had filmed the whole thing and posted it on Facebook. The video had 300 views and counting. The comments were brutal. OMG, Nessa Sollace is a cheater. I always knew something was up with her and Dane. Jared Sollace just became my hero. This is better than reality TV. My phone rang. Emma, my sister. Jared, are you okay? She asked. I saw the video online. I'm fine, I said. Better than fine, actually. Do you want me to come back up? I'm worried about you. Don't worry about me. Worry about Nessa. She's the one who just lost everything. After hanging up, I walked out to my shop. The Mustang sat there, half repaired, like a metaphor for my marriage. But unlike my marriage, the Mustang was worth fixing. I was adjusting the carburetor when I heard footsteps on the gravel driveway. Dane Carter appeared in the doorway of my shop, looking like he'd slept in his clothes. We need to talk, he said. I didn't look up from the engine. Do we? What you did last night was way out of line. What I did? I straightened up and faced him. What I did was tell the truth. You're the one who's been screwing my wife. Nessa and I, it just happened. We didn't plan it. Right. It just happened that you rented a motel room. It just happened that you've been meeting there for months. These things just happen. Dane stepped closer, trying to intimidate me with his height. You humiliated her in front of everyone she knows. She humiliated herself. I just provided the audience. You need to back off, Jared. Leave us alone. I laughed. Us? That's cute. You think you're an us now? We love each other. You love the idea of each other. Give it 6 months. When the excitement wears off and you realize she's just as selfish with you as she was with me, you'll be looking for the exit. Dane's face flushed red. You're just bitter because she chose me over you. Actually, I said, picking up a wrench, I'm grateful. You saved me from wasting any more years on someone who was never worth my time. He left without another word, but I could tell this wasn't over. Over the next week, I became the town's favorite gossip topic. Everywhere I went, people stared and whispered. Some looked at me with pity, others with admiration, a few with fear, like I might explode again at any moment. The local newspaper ran a story about the wedding disaster at Millbrook Country Club. A blogger from Boston picked it up and wrote a piece called "The Most Savage Divorce Announcement Ever." The video from the country club had been shared over 1,000 times. Nessa's wedding planning business was in ruins. 3 clients had already canceled, demanding refunds. Her social media accounts were flooded with negative comments. She'd gone from small-town success story to small-town scandal in one evening. But she wasn't going down quietly. On Thursday morning, I arrived at my shop to find "Loser" spray-painted across the front window in red letters. My toolbox had been overturned, tools scattered across the floor. Someone had poured sugar in the gas tank of my truck. I called the police, but without witnesses or security cameras, there wasn't much they could do. Officer Mike Reynolds, who'd gone to high school with me, took the report and shook his head. Probably kids, he said, but we both knew better. That afternoon, Benny stopped by the shop. He was a compact, muscular guy in his 50s who'd taught me everything I knew about boxing back when I was young and stupid enough to think I could make a career out of getting punched in the face. Heard about the vandalism, he said, surveying the damage. Word travels fast. Faster when you're the most famous man in Millbrook. He grinned. You know, I haven't seen this much excitement since the mayor's wife ran off with the fire chief. Glad I could provide entertainment. You planning to hit back? I looked up from sweeping glass. What do you mean? They started it. Well, started the paint anyway. You really gonna just let that slide? I'm thinking about it. Good, because the Jared I used to know in the ring didn't take cheap shots lying down. That evening, I drove past the Riverside Inn, the upscale bar where Nessa and her friends liked to drink expensive wine and complain about their husbands. Dane's BMW was in the parking lot, along with several cars I recognized from the country club disaster. I parked across the street and watched through the window. Nessa was holding court at a corner table, surrounded by her remaining loyal friends. Lila sat beside her, nodding sympathetically. Dane stood behind Nessa's chair with his hand on her shoulder, playing the supportive boyfriend. They were celebrating their freedom, their new relationship, their escape from boring old Jared. I sat in my truck for an hour, watching them laugh and drink and toast their bright future together. By the time I drove home, I'd made a decision. If they wanted to play games, I'd show them how the game was really played. The next morning, I made some phone calls. First, to the bank where Nessa and I had our joint accounts. As the primary account holder, I had the right to close them. I transferred my half of the money to a new account and left her half in a separate account with her name only. Legal, fair, and devastating to someone who'd been using our joint credit cards to fund her new lifestyle. Second, I called our insurance company and removed Nessa from our auto and health policies. Again, perfectly legal since she'd moved out and we were separated. Third, I called the 3 clients who'd canceled their weddings with Nessa's company. I offered to personally refund their deposits from my own savings, with one condition: they had to post honest reviews about their experience online. By noon, Nessa's business had 5 new 1-star reviews on Google, each one detailing how their wedding planner had been caught cheating at her own vow renewal ceremony. My phone started ringing around 2 o'clock. "What did you do?" Nessa screamed when I answered. "I protected my financial interests," I said calmly. "You left me, remember? I'm just making sure you can't take me down with you." "You froze our accounts." "I closed our accounts. There's a difference. Your money is in an account with your name on it." "I can't access it. The bank says there's a hold because of suspicious activity." "Huh. That's weird. Maybe it's because you've been using our joint credit card at motels." "You can't do this to me." "Actually, I can. I did. And I'm just getting started." I hung up and went back to work on the Mustang. For the first time in weeks, I was smiling. That evening, Benny called. "You hear about the fight night this Saturday?" "What about it?" "Dane Carter signed up. Says he wants to get in the ring, blow off some steam." I paused, wrench in hand. "Is that so?" "Thought you might be interested. You know, for old time's sake." "I haven't fought in 15 years, Benny. Like riding a bike. Besides, it's just a friendly match. What's the worst that could happen?" I thought about the spray paint on my window, the sugar in my gas tank, Nessa's smug face at the bar last night. "Sign me up," I said. "Now we're talking. This is going to be good." As I hung up the phone, I realized I was looking forward to Saturday night more than I'd looked forward to anything in years. Saturday night arrived with a cold October wind that rattled the windows of Benny's gym. The place was packed. Word had spread about the grudge match between the cheated husband and his wife's lover, and half the town had shown up to watch. I stood in the makeshift locker room, wrapping my hands with the same methodical precision I'd learned 20 years ago. My reflection in the cracked mirror showed a man I barely recognized, leaner than I'd been in years, thanks to stress and skipped meals, eyes harder, jaw set with purpose. "You sure about this?" Benny asked, checking my gloves. "Dane's been training here for 6 months. He's in good shape." "So am I," I said, shadow boxing to warm up. "Besides, this isn't about winning or losing. This is about making a point." "What point is that?" "That actions have consequences." The crowd roared as we entered the ring. Dane looked confident in his red trunks and pristine gloves. He'd been telling anyone who'd listen that he was going to teach the old man a lesson about respect. I spotted Nessa in the front row, wearing a low-cut dress and cheering for her new boyfriend. Lila sat beside her, filming everything on her phone. They thought this was going to be their moment of triumph. The referee, a guy named Tommy who worked at the hardware store, explained the rules. 3 rounds, 2 minutes each. No headshots, body blows only. This was supposed to be friendly. The bell rang. Dane came out swinging, trying to end things quickly. He was strong and fast, but he fought like someone who'd learned technique without wisdom. All power, no patience. I slipped his first combination and landed a solid jab to his ribs. He grunted and backed up, surprise flickering across his face. "Come on, old man," he taunted, circling me. "That all you got?" I didn't respond. In the ring, talking was for people who weren't confident in their fists. He charged again, throwing wild hooks. I caught him with an uppercut to the solar plexus that doubled him over. The crowd gasped. Dane straightened up, his face red with embarrassment and lack of oxygen. "Lucky shot," he wheezed. The second round was more of the same. Dane's technique was textbook perfect, but he'd never been in a real fight. He'd never had someone who wanted to hurt him standing 3 feet away. I could see it in his eyes, the moment he realized this wasn't going to be the easy victory he'd imagined. I worked his body systematically. Jabs to the ribs, hooks to the kidneys, straight rights to the stomach. Nothing illegal, nothing that would cause permanent damage. But enough to make him remember this night every time he took a deep breath for the next month. By the third round, Dane was breathing hard and his guard was dropping. I could have finished him easily, but that wasn't the point. The point was humiliation. I let him land a few shots, nothing serious. Let him think he was making a comeback. The crowd started cheering for him, Nessa loudest of all. Then, with 30 seconds left in the round, I trapped him against the ropes and unleashed a combination that dropped him to one knee. The referee started counting. Dane got up at 8, but his legs were shaky. He tried to clinch, to hold on until the bell, but I pushed him back and landed one final shot to the body that sent him stumbling across the ring. The bell rang. The crowd erupted. Dane stood in his corner, bent over and gasping, while I raised my gloves to acknowledge the cheers. "Winner by unanimous decision," Tommy announced. "Jared Sollace." I looked down at Nessa in the front row. Her face was a mask of shock and rage. This wasn't how the script was supposed to go. Her new boyfriend was supposed to dominate her ex-husband, proving that she'd traded up. Instead, Dane was slumped on his stool, being examined by the volunteer medic. I climbed out of the ring and walked straight to Nessa. "Enjoy the show?" I asked. She stood up, her face flushed with anger. "You're pathetic, Jared. A grown man beating up someone half his age." "Half my age, Dane's 42, and I didn't beat him up. I gave him a boxing lesson. There's a difference. This doesn't change anything between us." "You're right," I said. "Nothing can change the fact that you're a cheater and a liar. But at least now everyone knows that your boyfriend can't protect you any better than he can protect himself." I walked away, leaving her standing there with her mouth open. The next week, I escalated my campaign. On Monday, I canceled the lease on the office space, where Nessa and Lila ran their wedding planning business. As co-signer on the lease, I had the legal right to do it. They had 30 days to find new space or shut down. On Tuesday, I contacted every vendor they'd ever worked with, caterers, florists, photographers, musicians, and informed them that Nessa Sollace was no longer authorized to make purchases on behalf of Sollace Wedding Planning. Since the business was registered under my name for tax purposes, this was also perfectly legal. On Wednesday, I created a new Facebook page called Millbrook Business Reviews and posted detailed, factual accounts of my experiences with local businesses. I was especially thorough in my review of Dane's personal training services, noting his lack of stamina and inability to perform under pressure. By Thursday, Nessa's remaining clients were asking questions. By Friday, 2 more had canceled their contracts. But my masterpiece came over the weekend. I'd kept copies of all the text messages between Nessa and Dane, recovered from our shared phone plan. Nothing illegal about it. They were sent using a service I was paying for. The messages were explicit, detailed, and deeply embarrassing. I didn't post them online. That would have been too crude, too obvious. Instead, I printed them out and mailed them anonymously to Nessa's parents, her sister, her former clients, and the board of directors of the Millbrook Chamber of Commerce, where she'd been trying to get a seat. I also mailed copies to the wives of 3 men Dane had been texting inappropriately. Apparently, my wife's boyfriend wasn't as faithful to her as she thought. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. Nessa's mother called her, crying and asking how she could have thrown away her marriage for that disgusting man. Her sister posted on Facebook that she was ashamed to be related to someone with such low moral standards. The Chamber of Commerce withdrew their invitation for her to join. But the real fireworks started when Dane's other female friends began comparing notes. It turned out that Dane had been telling at least 3 different women that he was going to leave his current relationship for them. He'd been promising each of them a future while sleeping with all of them simultaneously. When Nessa found out, she confronted him at the gym. Their screaming match was legendary, witnessed by a dozen people and immediately reported throughout the town's gossip network. She threw her keys at his head. He called her a crazy witch. She accused him of using her. He accused her of being clingy and desperate. By the end of the week, their relationship was over, and Nessa was alone, broke, and unemployed. I should have felt satisfied. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt empty. Sitting in my shop on Friday night, working on the Mustang by myself, I realized that revenge wasn't as sweet as I'd expected. I'd destroyed my wife's life, humiliated her boyfriend, and turned myself into the most feared man in Millbrook. But I was still alone, still angry, still hurt. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. There's something you don't know about Nessa and Dane, something important. Meet me at the old summer camp on Miller Lake tomorrow at noon. Come alone. A friend." I stared at the message for a long time. It could be a trap. It could be Nessa or Dane trying to lure me somewhere for payback. But it could also be the truth. And after everything that had happened, I needed to know the whole truth. I typed back, "I'll be there." Whatever was waiting for me at Miller Lake, I was ready for it. I'd already lost everything that mattered. What was left to lose? Miller Lake sat 20 miles outside Millbrook, surrounded by pine trees and memories of better times. The old summer camp had been abandoned for 15 years, ever since the state health department shut it down for code violations. Now it was just rotting cabins and a dock that sagged into dark water. I parked my truck by the main lodge and glanced at my watch, right at noon. The October air was sharp and carried the scent of fading leaves. "Jared." I turned around. Lila Voss stepped out from behind one of the cabins, looking nervous and pale. She was alone, which surprised me. I'd expected Nessa or Dane, or maybe both of them with a baseball bat. "You're my mysterious friend?" I asked. "We need to talk." "About what?" She looked around the empty campground like she expected someone to be watching. "About how this whole thing really started. About who's really responsible for destroying your marriage." "I think I know who's responsible." "No," she said. "You don't." She walked to the old picnic table near the dock and sat down. After a moment, I joined her. "Nessa didn't seduce Dane," Lila said quietly. "And Dane didn't seduce Nessa." "Right. It just happened. True love." "It wasn't true love. It was manipulation." I studied her face. She looked genuinely frightened. "What are you talking about?" 3 years ago, you turned down my offer to buy into your restoration business. Do you remember?" I did remember. Lila had approached me with a proposal to expand my one-man operation into a full-service classic car dealership. She had the money, she said, and I had the expertise. We could make a fortune together. "I told you I wasn't interested in partners," I said. "You told me you didn't trust me with your life's work. You said I was too ambitious, too willing to cut corners. You wanted to buy cars at auction and flip them without proper restoration. That's not what I do. You humiliated me in front of my boyfriend at the time. You made me look like a fool." I was starting to understand. "So you decided to get revenge." "I spent 2 years planning it." Her voice was getting stronger, more confident. "I became Nessa's best friend. I encouraged her to start the wedding planning business. I introduced her to Dane." "You set them up." "I knew Dane's type. I knew he couldn't resist a challenge, especially a married woman. And I knew Nessa was feeling neglected because you spent all your time in that shop." My hands clenched into fists. "You destroyed my marriage for a business deal?" "I destroyed your marriage because you destroyed my relationship. My boyfriend left me after you made me look like an idiot. He said I was too aggressive, too pushy, just like you said. So you decided to ruin my life. I decided to show you what it felt like to lose something you cared about." I stood up, anger coursing through me like electricity. "You manipulated 2 people into having an affair just to hurt me?" I gave them opportunities. I encouraged them. I made sure they were alone together. I planted seeds. She shrugged. They made their own choices. How? I told Nessa that you were probably cheating on her. I showed her fake evidence, receipts from restaurants you'd never been to, phone numbers I said belonged to other women. I made her paranoid and insecure. And Dane? I told him that Nessa was unhappy in her marriage, that she was looking for excitement, that she'd mentioned how attractive she found him. Lila smiled coldly. Men like Dane don't need much encouragement. I felt sick. They fell for it. They wanted to fall for it. Nessa wanted to feel desired. Dane wanted to feel powerful. I just gave them permission to do what they were already thinking about. Why are you telling me this now? Because it's over. You've already destroyed them both. Nessa's business is finished. Dane's reputation is ruined. My revenge is complete. Your revenge? Did you think all those things that happened to you were coincidence? The vandalism at your shop? The sugar in your gas tank? I did that. I stared at her. You framed them. I wanted you to think they were escalating. I wanted you to get angry enough to fight back. And you did. Beautifully. You destroyed them more thoroughly than I ever could have. You're insane. I'm thorough. She stood up and brushed off her jeans. You cost me a relationship and a business opportunity. I cost you a marriage and turned you into the town villain. We're even. We're not even close to even. What are you going to do? Tell people the truth? Who's going to believe you? You're the man who humiliated his wife in public and beat up her boyfriend. You're the villain in this story. She was right, and we both knew it. Even if I could prove what she'd done, it wouldn't matter. Nessa had still cheated. Dane had still betrayed me. The affair had been real, even if the circumstances that created it were manufactured. Besides, Lila continued, what's done is done. Nessa and Dane hate each other now. Your marriage is over. My work here is finished. She started walking toward a car I hadn't noticed before, parked behind the trees. Lila, I called after her. She turned around. You made one mistake in your plan. What's that? You assumed I'd be satisfied with destroying them. Her confident expression faltered slightly. What do you mean? I mean you're not walking away from this. You think you're the puppet master pulling everyone's strings, but you're just another puppet. You can't prove anything. I don't need to prove anything. I just need to make sure everyone knows who you really are. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. It was recording our conversation. You've been recording me? She asked, her voice rising. Every word, including the part where you admitted to manipulating my wife, framing her boyfriend, and vandalizing my property. That's illegal. Actually, it's not. Massachusetts is a one-party consent state. I can record any conversation I'm part of. Her face went white. You can't use that. Watch me. I hit the stop button and immediately uploaded the file to my cloud storage account. By tonight, this recording will be all over social media. By tomorrow, everyone in Millbrook will know exactly what kind of person you are. You don't understand. If you release that, you'll destroy me. Now you're getting it. She lunged at me, trying to grab my phone. I stepped aside and she stumbled, falling to her knees on the gravel. Please, she said, looking up at me with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I was angry and stupid and I went too far. Yes, you did. I'll leave town. I'll disappear. You'll never see me again. That's not enough. What do you want? I looked down at her, this woman who'd spent 3 years methodically destroying my life, and felt something cold settle in my chest. I want you to experience what you put me through. I want you to lose everything you care about. I want you to know what it feels like to be betrayed by someone you trusted. Jared, please. The recording goes public tonight. After that, we'll see how much your friends and family appreciate learning about your hobbies. I walked back to my truck, leaving her kneeling in the gravel. As I drove away, I could see her in my rearview mirror, still on her knees, crying, But I didn't feel sorry for her. I felt something else entirely. I felt powerful. For the first time in months, I was the one in control. I was the one with the secrets and the leverage and the ability to destroy someone's life with the push of a button. It felt good. Better than good. It felt like justice. That night, I posted the recording on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I sent copies to the local newspaper, the radio station, and the blogger who'd written about my original confrontation with Nessa. By morning, Lila Voss was the most hated woman in Millbrook. But I still wasn't finished, not even close. The Millbrook Community Center had never seen a crowd like this. Word about my dodged a disaster party had spread through social media like wildfire. What started as a joke, a celebration of my failed marriage, had turned into the social event of the year. I stood at the back of the packed auditorium, watching people file in. Some came out of curiosity. Others came hoping for more drama. A few came to support me, though I wasn't sure I deserved their support anymore. Benny worked the crowd like a carnival barker, selling t-shirts that read, "Team Jared" and "I survived the disaster party." He'd turned my personal catastrophe into a fundraiser for his youth boxing program. "You ready for this?" he asked, appearing beside me with a grin. As ready as anyone can be for public humiliation. "Public vindication, you mean? You're a hero, man. The guy who stood up to the cheaters and liars." I wasn't sure about that. Over the past month, I'd done things that would have horrified the old Jared. I'd manipulated people, destroyed reputations, and enjoyed every minute of it. I'd become someone I didn't recognize. But maybe that wasn't entirely a bad thing. The old Jared had been weak, naive, too trusting and too forgiving. The old Jared had spent 23 years being taken advantage of by people who saw his kindness as weakness. The new Jared understood that nice guys don't finish last because they're nice. They finish last because they let other people walk all over them. "Ladies and gentlemen," Benny announced from the stage, "please welcome the man of the hour, Jared Sollace." The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. I walked to the podium, looking out at hundreds of faces. Some I recognized from around town. Others were strangers who'd driven in from neighboring communities to witness the spectacle. In the front row, I spotted some familiar faces. Nessa sat with her arms crossed, flanked by her lawyer and her sister. She looked like she'd aged 5 years in the past month. Her hair was unkempt, her clothes wrinkled, her face drawn with stress and exhaustion. Dane was there too, sitting as far from Nessa as possible. His left eye was still slightly swollen from our boxing match, and he kept glancing nervously at the exits. Lila was nowhere to be seen. According to the gossip network, she'd left town 3 days after I released the recording of our conversation. Her apartment was empty, her phone disconnected, her social media accounts deleted. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system. A month ago, I thought I was renewing my marriage vows. Instead, I discovered that my wife had been having an affair with her business partner. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Even though everyone knew the story, hearing it directly from me carried extra weight. Some of you have asked me if I regret how I handled the situation. If I wish I'd been more discreet, more private, more dignified. I paused, looking directly at Nessa. The answer is no. I don't regret anything. Nessa's face flushed red, but she didn't look away. For 23 years, I tried to be the perfect husband. I worked hard, paid the bills, kept my mouth shut, and looked the other way when things didn't add up. I told myself that marriage was about compromise, about forgiveness, about giving people the benefit of the doubt. I gripped the podium, feeling the familiar anger rising in my chest. But there's a difference between compromise and being a doormat. There's a difference between forgiveness and being a fool. And there's a difference between giving someone the benefit of the doubt and ignoring obvious lies. The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. Nessa didn't just cheat on me. She planned to humiliate me. She was going to wait until after our vow renewal ceremony, take half of everything I'd worked for, and run off with her boyfriend. She was going to make me look like an idiot in front of everyone I knew. I pulled a small velvet box from my pocket and held it up. This is the engagement ring I gave Nessa 23 years ago. The ring she threw back at me the night she announced she didn't love me anymore. I opened the box, revealing the diamond ring that had cost me 3 months' salary when I was young and foolish enough to believe in forever. Except it's not the same ring. Gasps echoed through the auditorium. Nessa's face went white. The real ring was pawned 6 months ago to pay for Nessa's business expenses. This is a cubic zirconia replica that cost me $30 online. I held up a receipt. I've donated the pawn shop receipt to the local newspaper. They'll be running the story tomorrow, along with bank records showing that Nessa spent over $15,000 of our joint savings on her affair. Nessa stood up abruptly. That's a lie. Sit down, her lawyer whispered urgently, tugging at her arm. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, gifts for her boyfriend, I continued, ignoring her outburst. All paid for with money I earned fixing cars while she was out building her business. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a thick folder. Speaking of her business, I have some interesting financial documents here. Tax records showing that Sollace Wedding Planning claimed over $50,000 in fake business expenses last year, receipts for personal shopping trips, spa treatments, and vacation rentals, all written off as business costs. Nessa's lawyer was frantically whispering in her ear now, but she wasn't listening. She was staring at me with pure hatred. The IRS will be very interested in these documents, I said. I'm sure they'll want to have a conversation with both Nessa and her business partner about their creative accounting methods. That got Dane's attention. He jumped up from his seat, his face panicked. I didn't know about any tax stuff. That was all her. Shut up, you idiot, Nessa hissed at him. Don't tell me to shut up. You said it was all legal. Both of you shut up, her lawyer snapped. But it was too late. Their argument was being filmed by dozens of phones, and their admissions were being heard by hundreds of witnesses. I waited for them to finish their public meltdown, then continued. But the real revelation came 2 weeks ago, when I learned the truth about how this affair really started. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the sound system. I'd like you all to hear a conversation I had with Lila Voss, Nessa's best friend and business partner. I pressed play, and Lila's voice filled the auditorium. Nessa didn't seduce Dane, and Dane didn't seduce Nessa. It wasn't true love. It was manipulation. The crowd listened in stunned silence as Lila's confession played in its entirety. Her admission that she'd orchestrated the entire affair as revenge against me. Her description of how she'd manipulated both Nessa and Dane into betraying me. Her proud explanation of how she'd vandalized my property and framed them for it. When the recording ended, the auditorium was completely quiet. You could hear people breathing. So there you have it, I said. The complete truth. My marriage wasn't destroyed by passion or true love or even ordinary infidelity. It was destroyed by a vindictive woman who wanted to hurt me for rejecting her business proposal. I looked out at the crowd, feeling strangely calm. Some of you probably think I went too far in my response, that I should have been more mature, more forgiving, that I should have handled this privately. I shrugged. Maybe you're right. Maybe the old Jared would have done that. He would have quietly divorced his cheating wife, moved to another town, and spent the rest of his life wondering what he did wrong. I closed the folder and put it back in my jacket. But the old Jared was weak. The old Jared let people walk all over him. The old Jared believed that if you treat people with respect and kindness, they'll treat you the same way. I smiled, and it wasn't a particularly nice smile. The new Jared knows better. I stepped back from the podium and looked directly at Nessa. You wanted to make me look like a fool. Instead, you made me into someone who doesn't take nonsense from anyone. You wanted to destroy my life. Instead, You destroyed your own. I turned to Dane. You thought you were taking another man's wife. Instead, you were being played by a woman who was using you to hurt me. How does it feel to be someone's pawn? Finally, I addressed the crowd. Thank you all for coming to my disaster party. The disaster wasn't my marriage ending. The disaster was staying in it for 23 years. I walked off the stage to thunderous applause, leaving chaos behind me. Nessa was crying. Dane was arguing with her lawyer. People were shouting questions and taking pictures. In the parking lot, Benny caught up with me. That was incredible, he said. You destroyed them. Yeah, I said, getting into my truck. I did. So what now? You feel better? I thought about it as I started the engine. Did I feel better? I'd exposed every lie, revealed every secret, and humiliated everyone who'd betrayed me. I'd won completely and decisively. You know what, Benny? I said. I feel perfect. As I drove home through the quiet streets of Millbrook, I realized that was true. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. Not because I'd forgiven anyone, but because I'd made sure they all paid the price for what they'd done to me. The old Jared would have called it revenge. The new Jared called it justice. And justice, it turned out, felt a lot better than forgiveness. My phone buzzed with notifications, friend requests, interview requests, book deal inquiries. Apparently, my story had gone viral beyond Millbrook. I was becoming famous as the man who'd turned his personal disaster into public vindication. I smiled and turned off my phone. Let them wait. I had a Mustang to finish restoring, and for the first time in years, I was looking forward to tomorrow. The disaster party was over. My new life was just beginning.